I'm Rob Sarney, and you're listening to What the Heck Fintech, where you'll experience and learn that Fintech is Fin Life. Let's get started. Welcome back to part 2 with Marcel Blais. If you didn't hear part 1, go back and hear about Marcel talking about quantitative finance and how students excel in fintech projects because they have the right skills. Yeah, so I'm going to ask you another question now, because I know you're so deep in project-based learning, experimental learning. You actually teach other professors along with other WPI professors sometimes, right? When they do the academy at WPI, but I know you've traveled to different universities and talked to groups, because that's different. You've been talking about the student side of interdisciplinary, right? Which is a fundamental, right, for everybody, but still professors, you're training up professors of the power of that, not just doing it in a standalone project outside of the class, like a capstone project, but also in class. I know you just recently went over to like Ohio or something like that, and you taught other professors. And how do you do that? And when do you see that light bulb moment all of a sudden click in for them? Like, this is what I got to do. You know what I mean? Because it's natural. You don't have to sell it to me. If you're in industry all the time, you know that's how you get things done, right? You're going to bump your head. Agile development, right? Iterate, right? But in an academic setting, they might not have that availability to practice that. Can you share any stories without saying any names or schools or anything like that of like what have you seen and when do they click and all of a sudden like, okay, they understand?
So I have a story that I love that I'll tell you in a second in that regard. But so we have a Center for Project-Based Learning at WPI. And in recent years, I've done some, like you had mentioned, some of this kind of work where either I have gone out or a group of us have gone out to do some trainings for other faculty. And one of the stories I really love to tell about this is one I did this past January, so January 2025, for a group of community college math and computer science professors in the South.
Mm.
And what I really tried to get them to think about, and this was think like more introductory level math. How do you do project-based learning in the classroom, like you mentioned, within a class? So not working with a sponsor, how do you come up with a cool project? And I think one of the keys is to know your audience. So I'm used to teaching, as you were, right, the WPI students. So very kind of STEM focused students. You kind of know the types of projects that will work well within a class. Again, you know your audience. They're all from the North, almost all from the Northeast. These teachers, these professors in the South, I asked them to think about their audience, which I don't know. I'm a visitor. What industries are these students going into? What are the big industries down here that are hiring students right out of their degree? What types of things does the local community think about in terms of math? And this is really cool. Being from Massachusetts, I never would have thought of this. So it's kind of a common rite of passage. If you're a male in that area, when you get your driver's license and your first car, you may buy a truck, you take the tires off, and you put on these big tires. What's something that often happens to people as a result of this? And I was training maybe 18 professors, and 2 of them had family members, kids that this had happened to. They got speeding tickets. So speeding tickets for a velocity that was different than what the speedometer says. So their speedometer says they're going 50, they get pulled over and they get caught on radar for going 65. And the reason why is that the way your speedometer works is you have the tire of the car, and when it does one rotation, right, it knows how far the car travels when the tire rotates once, because it knows the circumference of the tire, And so it knows how far how far your car traveled over some, it, how far it travels over a certain amount of time. You can estimate the car's speed. That's what shows up on your speedometer. Now, if you put a bigger tire on,
Yeah, I can see where you're going.
and you don't tell the system that you made a bigger tire, it is going to completely mess up that velocity calculation. And what it says on your speedometer is not how fast you're actually going. So when people put these new tires on these cars, they need to go and have the speedometer recalibrated so that you see the right speed. And people
Wow.
get speeding tickets when they don't do that step. And so some of the professors came up with a project for their some of their math classes where they would say, you just got these new tires. Here's the make and model of your current tire. Here's the new tire. Go through the calculation that you have to use to update the speedometer.
Down south speed and real speed, right?
But isn't it, in Massachusetts, no one does that, right? With winter, or I shouldn't say no one does it. Maybe some people are out there who do it, but it would be really uncommon.
Yeah, you don't see it that often.
Yeah.
Wow.
So some of the professors were writing that up to use as a project in their course. Because you think about the math, you've got there is a calculus problem in there for velocity, and you've got circumference of the tire, and it's just a neat thing that those students can relate to. And I think that's kind of the key, is to get it really helps for faculty to say, oh, this is a topic that is something real life, real world, that I know about, or the students know about, at least it's kind of around and you can relate to it. And then you cook up a project for your class like that.
Right.
I remember another project that I had once cooked up for a class this was, I guess, before streaming was really the most common way that people watch TV. But you have a company that wants to do an ad campaign across the major networks, Fox, CBS, NBC, ABC, and you can go to their websites and find out how much it costs to run an ad during these different time slots, during these different shows, and how can you optimally, with a fixed budget, how can you optimally get your ad across different audiences? And you can also pull data from the Nielsen ratings and do optimization. So there's a lot of data that's just kind of out there, and you can find what's free and cook up projects based on that. And it's not as hard as one might think, because there's just so much free data out there.
Yeah.
So that it takes a little bit of practice to do that, but I think you can do some really, really cool projects. And of course, maybe the tire one probably doesn't fall under the fintech umbrella, but certainly the optimization of the ad campaign one would.
Well, absolutely. I used to love when, for all the optimization, and in the business school, industrial engineering was something close to that from an optimization process standpoint. And I used to love that, because the flow charts they would create, I go, that is agile gold right there, because they are writing the stories, physical the agile stories for the developers of what they need to do in business terms on the business process. So that's the groundwork. So what the computer science students and know how that ties to the business process, the efficiency of that process. There's time, there's rates involved, there's materials involved. And I saw that deep in the manufacturing, activity-based costing. And that's why I love that optimization. Now, I know you're, into your beer. I don't mean from a drinking standpoint, but from a brewing standpoint, maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And I'd love to hear, because your brewery that you'll give the name, I don't want to steal it from you, but a lot of optimization, I bet, going on there. Do you have any stories there where you look at the efficiency and the cost efficiency, and because it's such a math focused brewery that you have?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it would have been 2014 when we officially started the company, but some friends and I run a company, Equilibrium Brewery. So we're based out of Middletown, New York. And although I'm not a brewer and I live about 180 miles northeast of the brewery, I'm very involved in the company. And as you mentioned, we're very, very math and science focused. And so there's a lot of process optimization in there. One really common optimization problem is the assignment problem of beers to fermenters. And so if you think about how a brewery actually makes beer, you have a bunch of tanks. They're called fermenters. You have liquid in those fermenters that's fermenting, turning into beer. But say you have 20 tanks, what beer should you put in each? Each one has a different process. Each one has to sit in the fermenter for longer. Each one has a different price. You also have to have a sense of what the market demands for each one. So how much are you going to make of this particular IPA or this particular double IPA or this particular lager? And so you actually have to do some pretty sophisticated process optimization just to decide your production schedule.
Maximize your costs, reduce your expenses, increase your revenue, your throughput, so you can get more profitability, right? And just have it flow with and it would already know how much water, how much whatever's going through, it already has that. You have that data, and that fintech is frictionless. You're just calculating it on the fly.
And it gets even more complicated when you have to think on the demand side, because you can make stuff cheaply as you can. That's all great, but you got to be able to sell it. And so you have a sales team who is saying, okay, we're predicting next month that the demand, across all our markets, international and within the United States, we're predicting demand for all this stuff, right? That then dictates the production schedule. It takes time to produce stuff. So you have to have this synchronicity between your forecasted demand and your production. And, if you make too much beer, now you have an inventory problem. Beer's got to be kept cold. A lot of IPA style beers are kind of fragile. And if they're not kept cold, they can go bad. On the other side, if you don't produce enough, you now have missed the opportunity to sell beer into the market. And that shelf space is in demand. There are competitors who will jump right on that shelf in the spot that your beer was if you don't get it distributed to that retailer. So all of that process optimization, all that is kind of stuff that you see in the fintech industry.
Yeah, and you got to start now. You got to calculate what's the next tariff going to be, and use some AI to try and figure out what it might be and how it's going to impact your production and your cost. And how do you price it? And do you change the price now or later, or do you? So yeah, I mean it's and at least you're ahead of it instead of waiting for it to happen, right? So all those things. There's so many moving parts that math, costs, finances, taxes, demand, throughput, optimization. It shows like every business has fintech in it, whether they realize it or not.
And I think it's a little bit goes a long way. So you don't necessarily have to be doing something incredibly sophisticated, but you need to be doing something smart, and you need to be doing some type of, it doesn't have to be a super complicated predictive model, but if you just fly by the seat of your pants, you put your business at risk.
Right. So Marcel, unbelievable stories. I love all of them. Now, here's where you get the opportunity to shamelessly plug any events you're going to, things that you're doing. If you're going to a wedding, whatever it is, you can shamelessly plug anything you want to do, anything going on in WPI or your own, whatever you want to do, you got it. So the floor is yours to shamelessly plug anything to our audience.
I guess I don't have a lot to plug, except maybe if you found this podcast episode interesting, give our Equilibrium beer a try. You can find us where we're distributed in retailers in something like 41 or 42 states. But we do have our Boston FinTech Week that you and I, Rob, are working together on. And so through the Mass FinTech Hub, we have a really cool thing on Friday. Is it the 19th of September?
19th, yep.
Yeah. And so there's going to be all kinds of cool stuff happening that morning. And, of course, through the whole week, but that morning we'll be doing a cool risk management little hands-on workshop as part of the that Friday morning set of activities where you can learn about how modern day risk management works with this one risk measure called value at risk. So if you read about a company failed their stress tests, if you read about that in the news, you hear about this kind of stuff all the time. There's different ways that companies are tested to see if they're able to weather the storm of financial markets. And one of the main metrics that's used for that is called value at risk. And it's not as complicated as one might think. And we're going to have a hands-on activity on that Friday.
And you're going to be doing it with our near and dear fintech friend, Professor Wilson Wong, right? So he doesn't get any better than that. Computer science, and he knows his stuff, and he knows his fintech too. So yeah, you're going to be teaming up together with him to do that.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. So Wilson and I will run that, and then if you come by, you can get a sense of how value at risk really works. I think it only should take about 10 minutes for anybody to go through what we're going to do, and so.
Right. Quick and easy. Yeah. And for any of the students, it's we're calling it a career advisory and networking summit. So you can get jobs, internships, real jobs, whether a freshman to PhD. So that'll be all networking style, not waiting in a long line to go bring your paper resume. It's all going to be digital uploaded resumes. But then also you'll be able to talk to professionals and startups and from big companies and IT and everything. So it's educational and finding jobs and great workshops like Marcel just talked about. So, and then we'll have a great panel after that. That's at the 19th in the morning at 9 to noon. Is that event at the Boston Fed. So definitely come on by. Free for all students. Come on in. Right, you got to register because you're going into the Fed, so they'll pat you down like you're going to airport security. But once you're in there, it doesn't cost a dime. Get in there. So
and it's also cool. It's also cool if you haven't been to see the Boston Fed. Yeah. It's an awesome place.
Yeah, very cool.
And it's right in the financial district, so it's easy to get to. Yeah, that's going to be really fun.
So Marcel, for anyone watching this podcast, students, professors that want to learn more about project-based learning from you, what's the best way for them to connect with you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it something else? Like, what do you think?
LinkedIn is good. You can also track me down. I think I'm the only Marcel on the faculty at WPI. So if you Google Marcel WPI, I think the first thing that comes up is my faculty profile.
We should have said the Marcel at WPI. Right. That should be a new name. Yeah. So. Well, Marcel, thank you so much. Great stories, and we're always going to be collaborating. We're going to have a lot of fintech fun as much as we can.
For sure.
So thanks for coming on for the podcast, and I think our audience learned a tremendous amount about you today, and all the things you do. Thank you so much. So I just want to say
thank you, Rob. This has been great.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to What the Heck, Fintech. Make sure you tune into our next episode as we continue to interview fintech leaders and share real-world stories from across the fintech ecosystem so you can fully understand that fintech is fin life.